Adrian Blackwood settled into his first-class seat with the quiet precision of a man who lived his life by schedules. At 37, he was the CEO of Blackwood Consulting, a company he built from the ground up into one of the most respected firms in the country. He had everything success promised: money, power, and the kind of reputation that opened every door. What he didn't have was anyone waiting for him when those doors closed. No family, no home that felt like one. The red-eye from New York to San Francisco was nearly empty. Adrian preferred it that way, and no chatter, no interruptions. Just 6 hours of work before the next meeting. He opened his laptop, already losing himself in quarterly reports, when a small voice interrupted his focus. "You look tired, sir." He looked up. A little girl stood in the aisle, maybe 4 years old, wearing a pink dress and a bright green backpack covered in cartoon animals. Her strawberry blonde hair was tied in a crooked ponytail. She watched him with the fearless honesty only children possessed. "I'm fine, thank you," he said politely, glancing around for her mother. "My grandma says people who work too much get tired eyes," she said, studying him. "You have tired eyes?" For the first time that day, Adrian smiled. "Your grandmother sounds very wise." "She was," the girl said matter-of-factly. "She's in heaven now. She went there last month, so now it's just me and Mommy." Adrian's chest tightened. "I'm sorry to hear that." "It's okay," the girl said brightly. "Grandma said she'd always watch us from the stars." "Do you believe in that?" Before he could answer, a young woman hurried up the aisle. She looked exhausted, her blonde hair hastily tied back, her eyes red from tears or lack of sleep. "Sophie, you can't wander off like that," she said gently, relief in her voice. Turning to Adrian, she added, "I'm so sorry." I looked away for 1 second. "She wasn't bothering me," Adrian said. "We were just talking." "I told him he has tired eyes," Sophie said proudly. The woman flushed. "Sophie, that's not polite." "But it's true, Mommy. You always say to tell the truth." The flight attendant appeared, directing them back toward economy, but Adrian spoke before he could stop himself. "Wait, how would you and your daughter like to sit up here instead? There's plenty of room." "Oh, we couldn't." "I insist," Adrian said gently. "Besides, Sophie and I weren't done talking about heaven." A quick call later, the upgrade was arranged. Sophie climbed into the seat beside him, her mother settling next to her. "I'm Charlotte Hayes," the woman said, embarrassed but grateful. "And you've already met my daughter, who apparently has no filter." "Adrian Blackwood," he replied. "And she's right. Hey, I do have tired eyes." As the plane took off, they began to talk. Charlotte explained she was a freelance graphic designer who had been caring for her mother during a long illness. Her mother had died last month, and she and Sophie were moving to San Francisco to start over. "I'm terrified," Charlotte admitted quietly once Sophie had fallen asleep coloring. "I don't have a job lined up yet, just some savings and a few clients. It's a fresh start, but I don't know if I can do it alone." "That's not fear," Adrian said softly. "That's courage." "Or foolishness," she murmured with a weary smile. Sophie stirred and looked up at Adrian. "Do you have a family, Mr. Adrian?" He shook his head. "No, it's just me." "That's sad," she said simply. "Everyone needs a family, even if it's small. Me and Mommy are small, but we're still a family." Her innocent words hit him harder than he expected. "You're right," he said quietly. "That is sad." "You can be our friend," Sophie offered. "Friends are kind of like family." Charlotte tried to hush her, but Adrian stopped her. "I'd like that." When they landed in San Francisco, Adrian did something he had never done before. He cleared his schedule. He helped Charlotte and Sophie gather their luggage, drove them to the temporary apartment Charlotte had rented, and spent the rest of the day showing them around the city, schools, parks, grocery stores. He even took them for pancakes. As they sat in Golden Gate Park watching Sophie chase pigeons, Charlotte asked, "Why are you doing all this?" "Honestly," he said, "I'm not sure. Yesterday, I wouldn't have imagined taking a day off work for anyone, but then Sophie told me I had tired eyes, and she was right. I've been exhausted for years, not from work, but from living the wrong way." "Still," she said softly, "you don't even know us." "Maybe that's why it matters," he replied. "You don't want anything from me. You just noticed me." In the weeks that followed, Adrian found reasons to see them again. He helped Charlotte find clients, fixed a leak in her kitchen, and picked Sophie up from preschool when Charlotte was stuck at a meeting. Slowly, the three of them fell into an easy rhythm. One night, after Sophie had gone to bed, Charlotte turned to him on the small balcony outside her apartment. "You're different now," she said. "You smile more, your eyes aren't tired anymore." "That's because I finally started living," he said quietly. "I cut my work hours in half. My partners think I've gone insane, but they don't understand. I've spent years building success and completely forgot what happiness looked like." She hesitated. "Adrian, I need to say this. Sophie and a broken bar, we can't be your charity project." He turned to her, eyes steady. "Charlotte, you and Sophie aren't charity. You're the reason I finally feel alive again." "Why?" she whispered. "Because you've given me something I didn't know I needed, a reason to come home." Charlotte's eyes filled with tears. "Sophie asked me yesterday if you could be her daddy." Adrian's heart stopped. "What did you tell her?" "That we need to take things slowly." "But I need to know, Adrian, are you here because we fill a void, or because you truly care?" "Both," he said simply. "You filled a void I didn't even realize existed, but my feelings for you, for both of you, are real. I love you, Charlotte, and I love Sophie like she's my own." Charlotte reached for his hand. "I'm scared. I've been doing this alone for so long." "You're not alone anymore," Adrian said softly. "You're a gift I never deserved, and I'll spend the rest of my life proving that I know it." 6 months later, Adrian proposed in the same park where he'd first watched Sophie chase pigeons. Sophie held the ring box, practically bouncing with excitement as Charlotte said yes through tears. "Now we're a real family," Sophie announced proudly. "And Mr. Adrian's eyes aren't tired anymore." She was right. His eyes weren't tired because, for the first time in his life, he'd stopped running. At their wedding, Sophie was the flower girl, scattering daisies down the aisle. In his vows, Adrian thanked her for telling a stranger on a midnight flight that he looked tired, because sometimes, the biggest truths come from the smallest voices. And sometimes, family isn't found by blood or plan, but by accident. When a little girl with a pink backpack reminds you to stop working and start living. When the plane touched down in San Francisco, Adrian did something completely out of character. He cleared his entire schedule. No calls, no meetings, no endless spreadsheets waiting for review, just time. He helped Charlotte and Sophie collect their luggage, escorted them through the busy terminal, and even insisted on driving them to the small furnished apartment Charlotte had rented for a few months. He spent the whole day with them. They stopped for breakfast at a cozy diner where Sophie devoured a mountain of pancakes bigger than her plate. Adrian found himself laughing, a deep, genuine sound he hadn't heard from his own mouth in years. Afterward, he drove them through the winding streets of San Francisco, pointing out good neighborhoods, quiet parks, schools, and grocery stores. Charlotte kept glancing at him, curiosity and confusion flickering in her tired eyes. "Why are you doing all this?" she finally asked as they sat on a park bench in Golden Gate Park, watching Sophie chase pigeons in the sunlight. Adrian looked at her, honestly unsure of the answer. "Yesterday, if you'd asked me to spend a day helping two strangers move into a city, I'd have said that was impossible," he said. "But somewhere on that plane, when Sophie told me I had tired eyes, a broken bar, something clicked. She was right. I've been exhausted for years, but not from work, from living wrong." Charlotte studied him for a long moment. "This is beyond kind, Adrian, but you don't even know us." "Maybe that's why," he said quietly. "You don't want anything from me. You don't know what I'm worth, or what I do. You just saw a tired man and cared enough to say something." I can't remember the last time someone did that. Over the next several weeks, Adrian found reasons, real and imagined, to see them again. He helped Charlotte set up her small home office and introduced her to clients in his network who might need a designer. But more than business, he brought laughter, support, and an unexpected sense of belonging. He picked Sophie up from preschool sometimes. He brought takeout when Charlotte was too tired to cook. He read bedtime stories, using silly voices that made Sophie collapse into fits of giggles. One night, after Sophie had fallen asleep, he and Charlotte sat on the small balcony, watching the city lights glitter like a blanket of stars. "You're different than you were on the plane," she said softly. He smiled. "How so?" "You smile more, And I said they're not tired anymore. Adrian chuckled. That's because I've started working half as much. My business partners think I've lost it, but I realized Sophie was right. A work isn't supposed to be your whole life. Charlotte hesitated, her tone turning serious. Adrian, I need to say this. Sophie and a broken bar, we're not a charity project. I can't let you help us out of obligation or guilt. He turned toward her. Is that what you think this is? Charlotte, helping you and Sophie, it's not charity. It's the most meaningful thing I've done in years. You've given me something I didn't even know I was missing. She looked at him, her voice barely a whisper. And what's that? A reason to come home. A reason to care about something more than work. A familia, even if it started by chance on a plane. Tears welled in her eyes. Sophie cares about you too. She asked me yesterday if you could be her daddy. His heart stilled. And what did you tell her? I told her that relationships take time. But Adrian, a broken bar, be honest. Are you here because you really care? Or because we fill a space in your life you didn't want to face? Both, he said simply. You do fill a space I didn't realize was empty, but that doesn't make what I feel any less real. Charlotte, I love Sophie as if she were my own, and I love you for your courage, your strength, and your heart. You've reminded me what it means to actually live. Charlotte's voice trembled. I'm scared. I've been alone for so long. What if this doesn't work? What if it's too much? You're not too much, he said softly. You're a gift. You both are. 6 months later, Adrian proposed, not in a fancy restaurant or on some exotic trip, but right there in the same park where he had first watched Sophie chase pigeons in the sun. She was part of the plan, proudly holding the small velvet ring box and bouncing with excitement. When Charlotte said yes through her tears, Sophie threw her arms around both of them. Now we're a real family, she declared with a grin. And Mr. Adrian's eyes aren't tired anymore. She was right. His eyes weren't tired anymore, because for the first time, he'd found something worth staying awake for. A little girl who'd noticed his exhaustion, and a woman who'd shown him that success without connection was just an expensive kind of loneliness. At their wedding, Sophie walked ahead scattering petals, her smile brighter than the sun. When it came time for his vows, Adrian turned to her and said, I owe everything to you, Sophie. You told a stranger he looked tired, and you were right, but more than that, you cared. Sometimes, the biggest truths come from the smallest voices. He looked at Charlotte and took her hands. And sometimes, the family we're meant to have finds us when we least expect it, on a plane at midnight, with a little girl who reminds us that it's never too late to stop running and start living. Because in the end, that's what Sophie had given him, not just honesty, but an invitation to rest, to love, and to finally belong.